Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. Allison Stauberg here. Tonight we are here with the Attention Deficit Disorders Association, ADDA-SR. The ADDA, some people call it ADDA, some people call it, has been around since 1987, and it provides supports to families and individuals impacted by ADHD. It was originally founded by Pam Esser. She's in the greater Houston area. There are chapters all across the state. Some are for adults that have attention deficit disorder or other similar conditions. And our group is out of Fort Bend County, and we actually have families that join us from all across the state. And it's more of a parent group. Each month we meet the last Tuesday of every month. Ever since COVID, we used to meet in person. Ever since COVID, we've been meeting by Zoom, which seems to be a better mode for a lot of families anyway. But each month we have a different speaker, and they, talk to us about various topics. And it's all across the board, the topics that we talk about. We have a lot of families that join these meetings because the topic is interesting. They may not have a child that has ADHD or ADD. They may have other comorbid conditions beyond the autism spectrum, etc. But nevertheless, we're glad you're here. So from a housekeeping perspective, we are in webinar mode, which means that we can't see you or hear you, but we do know you're there, and we're glad you're here. From a time perspective, we're going from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. So if you're trying to plan your evening or dinner or what have you, we will be finished up at 7:30. Tonight's webinar is being recorded, and everybody who has registered for this will get a copy of the slides this evening, as well as the recording. In fact, it'll probably come tomorrow, but you will get a copy of the slides, so you don't have to take notes on every single thing that you hear tonight. We want this to be interactive, although we can't hear you. If you have questions or comments or, something that you want to share, we want you to put that in the chat box. I'm going to be monitoring the chat box tonight for Ellen. So this topic that we're talking about, we haven't talked about in a while, or I'm not sure if we have ever, but we all know that when it comes to executive functioning disorders, being organized, having a plan and working our plan is always something that is a bit of a challenge, and a lot of difficulties ensue as a result of not being organized for our kiddos. So in light of school just starting or about to start for some of you folks, Ellen Delap is here tonight with us, and she's going to talk about some organization skills, and she's going to talk to us about how do we help our kids get organized, and how do we choose the right planner for our kids so we can get our kids started off on the right foot this school year. So having said that, Ellen, I am so glad that you're here with us tonight, and I'm going to turn things over to you.
Thanks. I'm so glad to be here, and to everyone who's joining us tonight, thank you for making this a priority and being here with us. We're going to talk tonight about helping your student choose and use the right planner. And not only is it applicable to your children, you might find that it applies to you as well. So a little bit about me. I am a certified professional organizer. There's 350 of us in the country. I am a specialist in working with people with ADHD and have certificates of study in ADHD and chronic disorganization, and have done some intensive training, as well as most of the clients that I work with in my practice of being a certified professional organizer are people with ADHD and coexisting conditions. My first profession was as an educator. I have a master's of education from Boston College, but I have been working in my company, professionalorganizer.com, for over 20 years. It's a passion, a calling, and I love what I do. As you might imagine, I am a big proponent of self-care, a lover of Pilates and planners myself, and I'm a mom of 2, and I am a Gigi of 4. So that's a little bit about me.
Can you just tell us just a moment, like how did you get started in this professional organizing? Was it, a personal experience, life experience, or how did you come to this?
Really think of it as a calling. In 2000, when I started my business, I was deciding whether to return to the classroom. And I learned about our national association called NAPO. It's the National Association of Productivity and Organizing Professionals. And I got started with, joining the profession, but also by taking lots of courses that have to do with the conditions of ADHD. I'm a member of the Institute for Challenging Disorganization and CHAD. And so getting started, I really feel like it was a calling because I wanted to make a difference in people's lives every day. And it just came into being by just connecting with the people who are in my profession and starting working with my clients.
Thank you for sharing that with us. So yeah, so tell us about what we're going to talk about tonight and the value of it. Like, why is this so important for the ADD or ADHD brain, or people with executive functioning deficits?
So we're going to go into detail on that, but the value of the planner is having an external tracking system for the tasks and the times that we need to do those tasks. So for our students, we're really thinking of this as a life skill, and learning how to use this external tracker for ourselves is going to propel us forward, not only in the things that we have to do, like school, but the things we love to do, like the extra activities after school. We're going to talk about what are the ways that a planner is best for your student. We're going to talk a little bit about their learning styles and, you know, talk about whether your student is visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and we'll talk a little bit about those terms. We're going to talk about some of the options and the fundamentals of using a planner, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, but need maybe a little bit of a reminder of how to go about making the most valuable use of planners. And then, of course, coaching your student into their use of the planner. So those are the four things we're going to be talking about. So a little bit of a background about, like, why do we need a planner anyway? All of our kids are on Schoology or Canvas or Google Classroom. So, sometimes they know their assignments, but we want to think about the planner really as a tool for a life skill. Like, these are the things we're going to be doing. And it's a good time to get started when our students are just learning about all sorts of things. So we can think about using a planner as just one more thing to learn about that will help make everyone's life thrive. So what we're using the planners, that what they're intended for, is recording their homework and projects, because we need to know what are the tasks that they're responsible for, and specifically what are the details, when, where, and who are supposed to be involved in that task. We're also talking about time management, putting together blocks of times to do a task, making sure that you do the next task on the next step, and attending activities and non-school related activities. So these are some of the time management things that are responsible. And planning, looking forward as an aid to executive function and looking at potentially double booking sometimes and overlooking, but just be thinking about what is it that we're looking forward to as an aid to executive function. So, of course, we have to address, why is this a struggle for our students? And, the word autonomy comes up quite a bit now with, I don't want to be told what to do. And of course, your children, you want to develop their autonomy as well. But it's a little bit of a back and forth sometimes with that struggle. I don't want to know what to be told and when to do things. I might find, can I remember my homework? So why do I need that? My homework might be in Schoology, Canvas, or be able to rewrite it. And sometimes your student struggle might be, I don't remember when or how to use my planner next, and I don't know where I put it. So as you might imagine, there's many struggles that our students are going to have with planners, but we wanted to be addressing some of the obstacles before we got started. So here's why struggle is worth it. So when you're thinking about building executive function, you're boosting working memory, you're identifying priorities. Many times we have similar priorities, but we want to focus in on how are the ways that we can help people identify what's important, most important to them. They might be building executive function by planning and chunking what's overwhelming to people, by breaking things down to more baby steps. Or they might be building executive function by organizing the materials and resources that are around them. So often when you're thinking about building executive function, think about not only are we getting started, what are we initiating with this? We're also, when we're building this, is boosting time management, helping people be more aware and self-monitoring their tasks and how much time those things might take. Managing multiple projects together, like a series of projects, simultaneous projects, and also just helping your students accomplish goals and building self-confidence and participating in what they love. So the struggle often is not only are we building executive function, we're boosting time management, initiation, and all sorts of executive function that can help our students. Allison, did you have a
Ellen,
question for us?
yeah, how do we address, like, some of our kids have working memory issues, processing speed delays. They're often behind the students in class. They're halfway through the assignment and the other kids are finished. Or so, like, I can say for one of my kids, that was a real struggle for us. So being able to quickly, they have the notes on the board, they have different things, and being able to get it down and transfer that to the planner quick enough without losing sight of the task at hand and other things was, I would say, a real struggle for us. How do you suggest note takers and examples like that, or part of the task is getting it written down and them doing that and committing that to memory?
I think there's a variety of ways that families work with working memory, not only like taking photos with your phone, which is one of the most common one we're seeing now is like, let me take a picture of what's going to be coming next so that I can start breaking it down into smaller chunks. Timers are often a part of how do we help people with working memory? What's the shortest amount of memory would we need to take care of this really small chunk of time? So we're going to talk a little bit about timers as well. So
Great, thank you.
So one of the things I want us to think about is what are our students' strengths? Like when we're thinking about how do we want to build this external factor that's going to help us, what are the strengths that we have or that we can use in fashioning a tool that's going to work well with us? So, many of our students are really big picture thinkers. So that's when a month at a glance planner is a really good tool for students. So when you're thinking about that, knowing assignments and events in relation to other dates. That's again part of our executive function, thinking about when are those small dates, when are those big dates? Can we get them captured on a month at a glance at a time? And you can easily see these recurring dates by placing them as well, which we often see on our digital planner is the same birthday, the any kinds of recurring events, regular meetings like ADDA. So a month at a glance might be a great way for your student to be thinking about how am I taking in tasks and when am I doing them? A week at a glance person is often more detailed and plans on tasks for certain days of the week, certain time blocks that we're thinking about. So sometimes it's good to spread out those weekly activities for the week at a glance into more manageable chunks. So be thinking about your student. Are they more detailed or are they more big picture when you're thinking about it? So the visual processor person, how many of us are out of sight is out of mind? So we're thinking about that visual processing person who might be thinking, I need to see it all together. Do I need to see it by task? How do I need to see it? Making it aesthetically pleasing. Many of us, myself, many years ago when I was in college, I always bought the Monet, the very beautifully aesthetically pleasing calendar that I could keep. So very visual. People like to see color. and designate events that way. So a paper planner could be the best way for your student to be thinking about, how am I capturing information? Is it going where? And keeping it visually. Did you have a question,
One thing
Allison?
that I was thinking, we do have a question. I'll go over in just a second. But one thing I was thinking is, a lot of our kids in the school, they have an IEP or a 504, and a lot of schools, rightfully so, have bans on phones and things like that. But that I just wanted to mention that may be an approval that you could get in your IEP or 504 document for use of a digital planner, the the being allowed to take pictures of the assignments on the board and things like that she was mentioning. But I think it is a true ask, and it probably does need to be in that IEP or 504. But because so many of our kids, while the paper planner is good, but so many of our kids are more motivated by digital things. And also, honestly, as a life skill with the digital calendars and stuff like that, if they build that out and they grow that, it's going to be so helpful in their future, work environments and stuff like that. But just don't be afraid to ask that question, because you might be thinking, well, there's no way because they don't do phones or their phones will get confiscated. But there is a way through those 504s and IEPs. Someone said, is there a place or a person that can teach this to and work with students to learn these systems instead of depending on the parent or family member that may not know these systems as well?
Absolutely. Whenever you search on Google, we have many student organizers that are part of NAPO, and it's napo.net. And you can also, if you're in the Houston area, it's napohouston.com. And those are the places that are the NAPO organizers. There's so many different specialties that people have to do with students, finances, every area you can imagine. So look up for those two resources to help you find someone. And I highly recommend an alternative to the parent for teaching this for many reasons. Unfortunately, and I'll cover this a little bit more in the coaching section, is that our students aren't always as attuned to us because we're their parent. So while someone else who's a professional organizer might say the exact same thing you have been saying over and over to your student, they might get a little more traction. So sorry, parents, I have kids, I feel your pain. But I would say getting a homework helper is one of the most remarkable assets to your relationship with your child. Definitely.
And I
So
think we definitely see that heightened time of where, parents are less, their input is less considered from middle school on, basically the teenage years. That's where we're going to see the most of that. They don't like our opinions as much during that time period. That's for sure.
exactly. And I will say many of the therapists also cover this if your child is already seeing someone in counseling, but there are a number of student coaches, and that runs the gamut from elementary through college, because many college students still have not really gotten the hang of this planner for their own life skills. So, and as we know, it takes many iterations of the same information for it to really stick, and also to help the accountability of your student. Allison, if you want to just go one slide forward for me. Thank you. So I will say primarily the students I work with are highly, highly visual. Most of the people that I work with ADHD, there's a little bit of a stigma with the paper planner. I think Allison's right. What she's saying is digital planner, way more cool, much more likely for your student to use that. And also because we are so immersed in the digital age, it's really truly if you can have your students start with a digital planner, that would be wonderful. And student planners really appeal to people who are auditory processors or verbal processors. So these are people that learn best by hearing. There are also people who verbal processors very much have to talk through the options and process information that way. So a lot of times you can add this information to your digital calendar just by talking into your phone, which is great. Using timers when you're doing the homework itself, having different sounds, having a playlist for when you're doing your homework or any other task itself. So just tune into the words that your students are using. I see what you mean. I hear what you mean. There's all these little indicators of what kind of processing modalities are strongest for your kiddos. So there's a couple other processing modalities I wanted to talk with about, kinesthetic, movement, tactile, touch. So sometimes it's the pen that your student is using, or if, I have seen students be very successful with dry erase calendars because there's a lot of movement involved with them, especially if there's like a series of dry erase calendars. So it's more than 1 month that they can see at a time. And then there's also the emotional and intuitive processors. They just feel that the moment and feel the work so deeply. Sometimes people like to use a bullet journal that are the emotional and intuitive processors. It is definitely a lot more work to set up a bullet journal, but it can be very appealing as a way to capture information. So just be like leaning into what you're hearing from your student to help guide them into what's going to work best for them.
Ellen, there was something that I read about several years ago, and it was like a almost like a digital notepad or something that could have a calendar in that, and it had like a
Remarkable too.
special. I'm
There's
sorry.
one notable and remarkable too that are the ones that
Maybe
I've heard
that's
a
what
lot
I'm
of.
thinking
Mhm.
about. But they were really cool. I mean, they were a little pricey, but they were really cool. And it's like, because part of our dysfunction is, we make these notes and we lose the notes. Like, a paper planner is big. Most of these kids don't lose their phones most of the time. But like something digital like that, and then it's perpetual and it's always there, as opposed to, losing some of these paper notes. Have you guys had any success with that, or are you familiar with those devices?
Yes, I see a lot of kids that are using those are often part of people's IEP planning. And so that is another way for us to be able to be sure our kids' modalities are matching up with the tools match what their needs are. So I had
And
a
that may
couple of
be something that might be more easily approved if it's not a phone. It may be something that could be good.
Yeah. And most of these things are downloadable on iPads, mini iPad, regular iPad. So this is really a great tool for you because you really want your kids' buy-in. And we're going to talk about that in a minute too. That's why we need to be, as parents, really open to our kids using the tools that work best for them rather than us dictating the tool they're using. So that's the Remarkable 2. And I think Notable is another app that's downloadable that will go on your iPad. The Remarkable 2 actually is its own, it looks like an iPad. It's its own device. But there's a lot of different things can be downloaded onto your iPad to be able to capture information. So remember, we're talking about a task list and we're also talking about a calendar because both of those are important for your student.
And then also with that iPad, it would have the capability to take a picture of the board at school or some of the other things. And depending on what you have loaded on the iPad, wouldn't have the ability to text or, make calls or what have you. So it could.
Exactly. Less distracting as a result. So the planner pad is one suggestion I have. It has views of a year, a month, or a week at a glance. And it's really for high school or older kids. It's a little bit more sophisticated. It will fit into a bag pretty easily if you buy the personal size. And there's also the bullet journal, which really is a series of dots. So there's lots of instructions on how to use the bullet journal, but it does encourage a lot of creativity and gives the kinesthetic learner the option to do a lot of doodling and coloring and pictures as opposed to words as well. So those are a couple options for the paper planner, and these are what they look like. And I think sometimes just showing people the pictures of what they look like, showing your students what they look like can be helpful too. Again, highly visual people want to see what we're talking about. So these are two paper planners that, of course, I want to suggest because they're also some of my peers and colleagues. One is Mamie Pack's Black Excellence Academic Planner, and then Leslie Josel's Order Out of Chaos Planner. And both of these are highly recommended. They have blocks of time set aside, much like the blocks of time in school. And then there's slots for after school activities so you can write in. So one of the goals, again, of our planner is for us to make time as seeable or experienceable as possible because we need this external device to help with executive function to be able to more than sense time passing, to see how things are going to work together in the big puzzle picture of your student's week.
Are these all available? Like you could just get them on Amazon, or do you need
Amazon.
to go to office? Okay, perfect.
Amazon. So these are the digital calendars. I think so many people use Google Calendar. It's phenomenal, and you can get multiple calendars. You can segment calendars. One thing I want to remind people is you can print a month at a glance or a week at a glance if you want to make it into a paper planner from the digital. And then there's so many scheduling things that are automated that's another wonderful opportunity about these online calendars is that things can be automated so that it sends you the reminders. Another thing I've noticed about the online calendars is there's so many widgets now that go with our phones that you can have your calendar on your locked screen and see your task list for the day. So there's lots of ways to make these more visual than there used to be. Cozy is a digital family calendar. A lot of families use them to coordinate all of the different activities that are going on in the family, in addition to the student having their own planner with their tasks and their assignments and their after school activities. So there's many more. These are just like a very small slice of what's available now, but these are ones that have been frequently mentioned to me by my clients.
One thing I love about the digital aspect, so, a lot of our families, we're always talking about, our kids are a little bit behind, or they need a lot more hand holding or constant reminders. Our kids feel like we're nagging them to death, and we feel like we're repeating ourselves to death. But this could, for all the other extracurricular, or maybe it's just a reminder to brush their teeth or their alarm to get out of bed, or to, this is our homework time. This is, extracurricular stuff. So I feel like a lot of things can live on there. So that way we have less of the, the constant reminders that we're annoyed by, and quite frankly, they're annoyed by all of our repetitions of our suggestions of the things that they do. So I think having that on there, and honestly, I would say, my kids are older now, but starting early on that, right? And it's okay to meet them where they are, and it's okay if they're not there yet because they forgot to put this on the calendar. But each year they're getting a little bit better, and they're learning and they're growing. And so I can say that when your kids are younger, you think that you're never going to get to that place of independence or just the basic activities of daily living that they do without being prodded, but you totally get there, but I think that this is a really, really great start of having that on there, just because they don't mean to forget these things. They just got so much stuff going on in their brain. They want to please us. They want to please others. They don't want to forget their homework and things like that. So I think that is it's good to incorporate all aspects of that as well.
Absolutely. And I totally agree that, I like to say everyone's going to have an oops, because even the neurotypical people right now are really getting up to speed with um, how to live life post COVID. And I think that we all need to remember that we're all work in progress. So, but for sure, I mean, anything we can automate, that we can help our children be more independent, anything that we can promote their confidence, that's what we want to set into motion as early as possible, because those are the things that they need as life skills as well. So here, of course, are the pictures of the different digital calendars that I talked about. Y'all are very familiar with Google Calendar, I'm sure, and very similar to Outlook. And then the Cozy Calendar has several views, and it also has lists. So it's available on any device that you have, Android, iPhone, iPad, any of these things. I think there's a free and there's a subscription version of Cozy that's available. And speaking of family
I'm wondering.
calendars, mhm, go ahead.
I was going to say, I was just wondering about Alexa. Like, if you're
Yep.
using the Google Calendar and, you guys, a lot of families have Alexa in their house. So once that Google Calendar is set up, your student would be able to add things to their calendar just by, just telling Alexa. So that may be another way that they could quickly get things on there without feeling overwhelmed with the task of adding it to
Absolutely.
the calendar.
Absolutely. And I know that there are Echo Dots all over people's houses. So there's lots of ways to just call out to your device to get things added to your calendar. I'm a big believer in body doubling too, which, I'll talk a little bit about during the coaching section, but in case I don't mention it, you're being the model and sitting with your student, you adding to your calendar, they adding to their calendar during like what I call family meeting, is a really important way to also be modeling this, acting as a body double where you're sitting in the same space, tethering your student to the task of putting things on the calendar is really a valuable family exercise together. So I am a hybrid model planner myself. Sometimes you can use the paper planner with auditory reminders, like we were talking about, like Allison was mentioning, through there's routines that are on your Alexa and Google Home. You might use a month at a glance and a week at a glance for your student, because depending on what their documentation shares with them, like, are we having a test every Thursday? Is that a reminder that should be not only on our month at a glance, but our week at a glance? Using a dry erase board to help you chunk information into manageable pieces, because a planner is not only used for recording dates and tasks, it's also used for processing, like how do I make these chunks small enough that my student feels capable and not overwhelmed with the tasks at hand. Reminders and notes apps, those are wonderful too. So just be open to experimenting. Like I said earlier, however your modalities work, their modalities can be completely different. We want to encourage them not only to be open to new options, but to be as consistent as possible, not give up too easily. And we'll talk about that in a minute too, on like if we had a little oops this week, fresh week, start up next Monday with getting back on track with whatever planner you're using.
One thing you were talking about was chunking that I think is important. A lot of teachers have gone to like college models where you get a syllabus, like they kind of talk about what we're going to do for the whole semester. And for the ADHD brain, that is really overwhelming. Like you get this giant thing of all the stuff you have to do. And I mean, so I think that chunking and breaking that down into bite-sized pieces, because a lot of us get those things and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm never going to be able to get this. So breaking it, even though it's for this whole school year, it's the whole semester, they're just looking at it of the mountain and sea of work that they have to do that they're going to feel behind on. And so just putting it, this is what we have due in a week or 2 weeks, and maybe not looking at the syllabus as much in that way and putting it out on the calendar. I think that those, although the syllabus are helpful for planning, for people that really, really want to plan and, know and have things in advance, it can definitely really, really be overwhelming for that ADHD brain when you see all of it at once.
Absolutely. So I like to say planners are not one and done, because honestly, this is a work in progress, ongoing. It's a journey. So just as a little foundational information here, of course, you want to add information to the planner all the time. And I would encourage you to encourage your student to do that too, so you don't forget. Again, don't tax your working memory. Write it down. Write stuff down all the time. And you want to add all the information, all the extracurricular. Your student goes to church on Wednesday evening, it should be written in the planner. Your student goes to band practice every day or has drum lessons, that should be written in the planner. And you need to encourage your student to check their planner every afternoon. The age-old, do you have homework today? No, I don't have any homework. Oh, yes, you do. So you need to check your planner every day to be sure you know what it is you have homework in. Be sure you place your planner where you can see it and carry it with you. And then have a weekly planning time. And this is really valuable for everybody, but especially the adults, where you're coming together and just assessing what's ahead today, what's ahead tomorrow, what's ahead on Friday, so that we can all be supporting each other and encouraging each other, and being a little bit accountable about being sure not only are we writing it down, but we're doing what our plan is. We're working our plan. And then don't give up. It's always going to be fresh start. Whatever day is an oops, tomorrow's a fresh start. So when bad things happen, and they do, what happens when you stop using your planner? Doesn't matter what kind of planner it is. Sometimes we lose interest, we lose motivation, we have a little, brain fog, a little gap. No matter what the oops is, just start again right away. Don't think that we need to give up on your planner. Planners never work for me. Yes, they do. We just start them again right away. I'm a great planner and I plan a lot. Then what? I have some really, really great planners for people. But what I find is initiation is a whole nother step after the planning. So be thinking about what is your initiation and warm up for getting started. For some people, that initiation looks like I'm sitting down at the table and I'm arranging my supplies. For some people, that initiation looks like I have certain places I sit. Some people, it looks like I have music that I play or I put on my headphones. So help your student think about what it is that helps them get started on the homework, as well as I wrote everything down so I know what I'm supposed to do. And
Do you
then
recommend a reward program? Like in ramping this up with our students that might be a little bit resistant, do you have any suggestions of like a reward program of helping them be motivated to do this?
I totally think reward programs work. And I also think tons of praise, because they know that when they're following through and they are praised for it, they're much more likely to do whatever task it is. Or even for younger students or middle schoolers, even, I'm thinking, it's not intrinsic motivation here. We're looking for external motivation again. So, yes, we need a reward program to get us in the habit, and then reflect on the feeling of how does it feel? What does my future self feel like when I know I did my homework today and I didn't put it off? Because a lot of procrastination is often confused with just lack of initiation. And that's lack of motivation because I don't know why I'm doing this. This doesn't make sense to me. Why do I even need to do this? Right? We hear this all the time. So, yes, we need to make it external, that motivation. And then, you know, if I'm just so overwhelmed by it, which happens a lot by our students, they're exhausted at the end of the day. We just need to help them with breaking it down into the babyest of baby steps. So, we all said we wanted our students to have some autonomy. So we have to help them by operating as their coach as opposed to their boss sometimes. So these are how you get your student engaged in their planner, whatever planner they're choosing to use. So helping them through using coaching questions is a really valuable tool to help them start reflecting on their autonomy and the way they want to go about the work because they're assigned the work, which is not autonomous, but how they do the work is what is autonomous. So here's some questions. Have you planned your time to work on that? Can you show me where you have the time? When do you have the time to do that? How do you know you have that time? Can you see it? Do you know what else you may have to do at that time? Can you tell me what else may get in your way? You have 2 tests on Friday and you get home from play rehearsal on Thursday at 9. What's your plan to study for those Friday tests? So again, giving them back the decision making, and it's more than one question, it's a series of questions. And it's also just helping the processing as much as initiation is a big part of this, like reflecting on time and how much time will that take? I don't have that question on here, but so many times our kids think it's going to take 5 minutes and it is not going to take 5 minutes. So a lot of times it's good for the first day or two of homework to think about, okay, let's play the, beat the timer. So you can set the timer and see if it took 15 minutes or if it took longer. Or you can say, how long do you think that's going to take? Let me write that down and then set the timer and see how long it really takes. Again, time estimation is very weak for people with ADHD. So you want to help promote their sense of time awareness. And you also want to help them be more reflective and be more engaged. So by giving them the opportunity to learn and create data from this, from their homework time, is going to be in the long run a giant asset to them as they mature and go on to the next steps, whatever they may be.
Ellen, we had a speaker once that said, our kids just really don't see next. When we have a plan and we work our plan, we have this next and next and next, I'm going to do this, but they don't see next. And so when these planners are out there and we're working with them and talking through some of these things, we're helping them see next. So it's out there in the planner. We're putting feet on next for them because next is a deficit of what they're not seeing. And that's why so many times they're falling short because they didn't see that next step that they needed to do.
Exactly. So I call it loving accountability because nobody likes to be nagged. Not even me, not even you, nobody. So help your students by body doubling with them. Let's do this together. I'm checking my own planner this afternoon. Why don't you check your planner? Thinking about processing or chunking. Let's break this down to make it easier. So your students do not intuitively know how much of a chunk they need. They just know they need the babyest of baby steps to get started. And then how is this going to work, or how is this working? So thinking about, is this working for you? How are we going to get started? Did that work for you? Did we spend enough time on that? Do we need to add more time for this? I think it's pretty well established that in the time estimation for people with ADHD, you need to double or triple the time that they're assessing that it will take to complete any task, whatever that task might be. So again, you want to talk a little bit about the process improvement so that they're not only engaged in the process, and this, of course, suspending all judgment on how the process went. If the process was really, really difficult, we want to not talk about how bad it was, but what was good about it and what did we learn from this situation so that we know next time what can we do a little differently as opposed to what didn't work this time. So I wanted to wrap up with just having you all think about um, your own planners and why the modality works with you, like how come you chose the planner you did, and just be thinking about, now that you know a little bit more about this topic, what's one baby step you can help your student with. And so if you want to put that in the chat, what's one baby step you can help your student with now that you know a little bit more about planners, I'd love to hear your reflections.
Yes, that's a great idea. So yes, right in the chat box, just tell us the one baby step that you're thinking, or your aha moment, the takeaway that you have got from this. I think it's so good, and I think about the ADHD kid's room, or their purse, or their backpack, or everything is so often jumbled. I think is a good word. But helping them with this organization is just so profound. So come to us in the chat box if anybody has some ideas or thoughts. Also in the chat box, for anyone that has had something that has worked well for you and your loved one, we'd like to swap ideas here as well. And while we're waiting for that chat box, I just wanted to say, I didn't mention this at the beginning, ADA, the ADDA-SR, the Southern region, you can join this organization. It was Pam's heart. She formed this organization back in 1987. It was her heart that it was never pushed upon anybody for people that couldn't join. They didn't have to join to get resources, to get help, to get assistance, and helping families with ADD, ADHD. But I just wanted to tell you that the ADA organization is a wonderful organization. I don't work for them. They don't work for me. I'm a volunteer. But to join the ADA organization, it's like $40 a year. When we send out the email with the recording and with a copy of tonight's slide, I think there'll be an application in there too. So should you want to join the organization in the future, you absolutely can. It's for a low price, and they do have a big conference with big speakers that come in from all across the country. And I personally have attended that in the past, and I will say that you guys will definitely find value in that. Someone says, love the suggestions. My son is just so defensive about suggestions that I don't know how to approach the conversation. Amen, sister. Yes, I feel that. What do you think about that, Ellen?
I think first of all, come with as empathy. Hey, I don't like to talk about things that are hard for me too, and see if they'll open up about like what is so hard about this and why this is hard. And I think it's really insightful for them to share with you, like, and there could be some tears, really, because there's really difficult, different reasons. Um, a lot of times it comes down to just, I haven't been good at this. This has been really hard for me for lots of reasons. So, yeah. So, see if you can start with some empathy before you start with any direction. And it might be a series of conversations that are baby step conversations to get to where you're going with this, for sure.
Okay, so one person said that their takeaway was actually asking him what he uses, digital or paper. I assumed paper because that's what works for me. So I think getting their buy-in, right? Like what it is, when the type of learner like you were talking about, Ellen, getting their buy-in. And maybe it's the fun thing, like the buy-in, like, if it's the paper thing, it's the trip instead of ordering it on Amazon. Oh, they love Amazon. So maybe they're picking it out on Amazon. Maybe they're working with you and looking at the different options on Amazon, or maybe we're going and touching and feeling things at the office supply store, or things like that could all be part of the buy-in as well. Another person said, does it work well for students to do a top-down approach where they list broad categories and then break that down to tasks for each day and then the time of the day? Or is that too complicated for middle school and high school kids?
No, I think that's how they would naturally come about it, because they're segmented into categories by subject already. So I do feel like a lot of times it's just pulling it out by that top-down method, and then after school activities. And there's just so many different ways organization plays giant roles in our kids' lives, but they are not necessarily seeing it as organization. So, like, those broad categories are a really important thing to share with your student too, and talking about that things are grouped together, and in school they're grouped together by subject. Hey, this is all the math we have to do, that kind of thing. So I love that idea of not only likening it to a strategy that we go about in life every day, because hey, in our room we want to put all the technology together, and that's a little zone in our room that is that group that we of things we use together. So yeah, I love that idea.
And I think a lot of it too is just, this day with social media, we're always seeing what other people are doing with their kids and what other kids are doing and comparing and things. And I always talk about, it's about us meeting our kids where they are. It's okay. It's okay wherever they are, and they're growing and we're adapting, you're adapting. And I think that's so important. We actually have Pam Esser here with us tonight. Hi, Pam, we're glad you're here. She says, again, she's the founder of this group. We use a website called DAC DAK, and I'm going to press go on that in the chat box so everybody can see that. But DAC let's see, you can add widgets to it with your family calendar, etc. Our digital dashboard is an old computer that we don't use for anything but the dashboard. It stays on all the time with the weather, etc. The family calendar, it's the biggest help on the digital dashboard. And then she also says, starting with the baby steps, when we think they can accomplish more because of their intellect, I expected this to be easy. But if it is not something they are used to and not part of their routine, it is not an easy task. And that is true for these dual diagnosis where we have kids on the autism spectrum. They like routine, and we're changing up things. It kind of makes it difficult. But if it's not easy, not something they're used to, and not part of their routine, it's not an easy task. I've added this as a goal for this year. Instead of expecting something daily, start with 1 entry a week, then 2, and so on. So basically, Pam is suggesting baby steps of kind of getting there, getting where you're going, and baby steps are a step in the right direction. Someone else says, play like it's your neighbor's kid and not yours when you work with them. That's true. And if our kids would just act like it's the neighbor's mom and not us, that would be good too. We'll send out those instructions. That's really, really good. And also email teacher to get them to help the student with their particular class planning, with the choice of planner the student likes. And as we were talking about earlier, like with processing speed delays or working memory issues, we talked about pictures or things like that. There are accommodations in those 504s and IEPs for a note taker. Our copy of the notes, like where the teacher provides a copy of the notes. So where the student isn't so focused and worried about getting down what's on the board, they're going to get a copy of those notes sent home, and that's where they're going to enter that into the planner later or into that calendar later, so they have time. Because I definitely have processing speed delays and working memory issues with my kids, and that panic, I would call it panic. My kids would get panicked about I can't get this done. I'm already behind. Like, because they were already, working, or like the other kids have gone out to recess and they're still working on their assignment and wondering if they could even possibly get it done before the kids come back from recess and things like that. So I think that those accommodations are appropriate for kids that are struggling in that arena. What do you think about that, Ellen?
I totally agree. I think also getting like this unified approach where, the teachers, paraprofessionals, whoever is available to be a part of the plan is a great idea. And you're right. I think kids, like their first reaction is pretty much being anxious. And so you have to keep that in mind so that you can make it much more manageable so they don't get paralyzed. So,
And I think a lot of our kids are already anxious. They're already aware of their differences, like differences in learning, differences in communication or relationships and things like that. So we don't want to make it worse. And
right.
of course, our neurotypical kids entering middle school, I mean, these are challenging years for kids that don't have disabilities. It is challenging for sure. Well, Ellen, this was a fantastic topic, and it kind of just brings things back to center as things that we know as parents, but I guess we don't think about it. Like it really resonated with me when that speaker said, "Our kids don't see next." Like that was such a aha moment for me, and I've talked about this before. It's like when it's bedtime and you tell your kids, go upstairs, put your pajamas on, brush your teeth, and lay your clothes out for tomorrow and get in bed. And they get upstairs and they do none of it. And you're like, what is going on? Well, we lost them at go up the stairs, and then we had 10 other commands after that. And then we wonder why they can't focus on that.
Exactly.
So it is so true. Well, guys, watch for your email tomorrow. It's going to have Ellen's contact information. Ellen, are you for hire? Your professional organizer.com. If people needed help, like, do you help organize kids' rooms? What do you do? If somebody wanted to hire you, what could they hire you for?
I work with families on all levels. Like I work with families on time management, paper management, their spaces, getting things organized in their space. I work both virtually for people who want to do this in baby steps, like 1 hour segments, and in person in their space. So if they would visit my website, it has a list of all the things that I work with people on. I work with seniors. So it's a wide variety, but I would love for them to join me on social media, either follow me on Instagram or my Facebook page. So I'm looking forward to connecting with everyone, and I love, just sharing resources like this evening.
We have somebody that says, I work for a program of Easter Seals called Bridging Apps, where we help people with disabilities use technology in their daily lives. We recently wrote a blog post that could be helpful with using shared notes. With using shared notes with your kids to help add items to the list, etc. There's a video as well. And this went to the host and panelists. Could you copy and paste that to everyone so they can have the link? And I know that Bridging Apps, there's a lot of resources out there and some ideas out there. So thanks for
That's
putting
great.
that in the chat box as well. I definitely appreciate that. Let me see if I
Yeah,
can. I think I can copy and paste it. Let me see if I can
good.
paste that to everyone.
That's
There
great.
it goes. Okay, I think,
Good.
can everybody see that now? Yeah, it did go to everyone. So that is out there in the chat box as well. Well, Ellen,
Great.
it's been a pleasure. And so if somebody said, hey, you know what, we need this, we need to get this planner thing off the ground, it's the beginning of the school year, and we need help with implementing this and some ideas, they can reach out to you and they
Absolutely.
can partner with you on this. Okay, perfect.
That's great.
Well, guys, thanks for spending an hour with us tonight. Ellen, thank you for taking your time to go through this with us and the details. And if we can be of assistance to anybody, certainly reach out. Certainly been our pleasure. We will meet again. We took a little break for the summer, but we do meet the last Tuesday of every month. It's sometimes a little gyration around Thanksgiving and Christmas, but we will meet again next month, the last Tuesday of the month. So you guys will get an email for the topic next month as well. Thanks, Ellen, and have a great evening. Take care.
Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye now.